Welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. I'm Joe Cook, got RT Young. This is the Reheat, where we go over some of the big storylines with camp just a couple days away. Got to get a little bit more off-season in before the real season starts, and that means talking about some previews, talking about some media day spats, talking a little bit about just stuff that's off the field because on-field stuff starts this week. That's why you need to like this video. That's why you need to subscribe to this channel. We will have some video coverage of practices, some clips. You saw Colin Cowherd use a few. We'll be using a few here on our channel, talking about practice, getting reactions in, doing all that. So make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you have not done so yet, go and buy our guy Paul Wadlington's Thinking Texas Football, the 2025 Longhorn Football Prospectus. Looks at every position, every player, every opponent, every SEC team, and, of course, the whole landscape of college football. Also talks a little bit about the 2025 recruiting class, so go check that out. We have the link in the description. You're not going to want to miss it. You're not going to want to miss anything Inside Texas has to offer. But we will talk a little bit about some analysis that RT you put on Inside Texas about something that showed up on the Worldwide Leader. If you big college football fan, you kind of know about Bill Connolly's SP Plus. Bill's a Missouri guy. He's from Oklahoma. But what he tries to do is he really tries to let the numbers feed into his opinions. And now that he's at ESPN, I think you've kind of tracked him throughout his career, going from Football Study Hall, Football Outsiders, SB Nation. He lets the numbers inform a lot about what he thinks. But sometimes he tries to just think independent of the numbers. And, it is what it is when he comes up with it. He put together a SEC preview on ESPN. And, some of it was justifiable, but some of it, as you go on to explain, lacks a little bit of context.
Yeah, so where do you want to start? You want to start with the Texas part of it?
Yeah, let's start with obviously that, and then the I guess where you get into the Arch Manning part of everything. And I think he's decently eloquent with how he approaches the Arch situation, and it kind of represents everybody's view of Arch if they're doubting a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think that, one thing that he said is he expects Texas to be the number one team in the polls in a couple weeks. And this was sort of buried in his Texas preview. He expects them to be number one in the polls, but that he does feel like there's a lot more questions about Texas than he typically has about the number one, like maybe consensus number one team in the country, which I thought was a little interesting. And I think part of the reason he's doing that is he's hedging a little bit on the Arch Manning hype, because he's saying a lot really does ride on Arch Manning to be really incredible, which obviously we at Inside Texas, I think we expect him to be, close to incredible. But he asked the question, what if he's just merely really good? And the returning lack of returning starters at defensive tackle, or the two new right tackles on the offensive line, new guys at wide receiver. What if that, combined with Arch not making this massive leap, maybe leads to a little bit of a down year, and not the consensus expectations that so many people are expecting from this Longhorns team. So I think that's framing it a little bit. But also he has numbers that obviously back up his stance. And part of the reason that Texas is number 5 in the country, number 3 in the SEC and S&P Plus, is because they rank, I believe, what did I say? 77th in returning production in the whole country. Obviously, even though Arch Manning, Quintravian Wisner, DeAndre Moore are returning, there are some new faces on the offense. He does expect, from a defense standpoint, the defense to be number 1 in S&P Plus throughout the year. So obviously that's a good sign. What did you think of him? Or the numbers? I don't really understand how they're expecting Texas's special teams to be so putrid again, with entirely new personnel. And you'd think some of the great, stats that Jack Bowmeister or Mason Shipley put up at Utah and Texas State respectively, you'd think that would translate. But I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into it that I don't know.
Yeah, one of the things that SP Plus does that I think is really tough to grapple with, even if you read it like we do a lot, is that it really doesn't care about wins and losses. I think if I know this only because I'm a Texans fan. I think there was a game like Texans versus Steelers in the David Carr years where they had like 100 yards of offense. And if any game you look at and you think that team had 100 yards of offense, there's no way they won. I think the Texans won by like 2 scores, and it's turnovers, it's stuff like that. So you could look at that and think like, what the stats tell you what should happen, but it doesn't always go that way. The final score is the final score. The stats are the stats. Usually they feed into each other, but it's not always that way. And I think when it comes to special teams, that he grapples with transfers. It's very difficult to have so much variable data, guys changing rosters all the time, moving up, moving down, making lateral moves, maybe starting, maybe not, to come in and figure out how to do that. I know he relies on ESPN's recruiting rankings, but that's all to say that when you're thinking about special teams, it's not just made field goals, it's not just touchbacks, it's kind of yardage, and when you have someone like Ryan Sanborn who can kick it really far, and then you have someone like Xavier Worthy who can pick up like 10 yards a return or be an All-American, you're kind of constricting the field and where opponents have to work with. Texas didn't do that last year between Michael Kern, between Silas Bolden. They weren't constricting the field. They didn't make very many big kick returns. That's something Paul has lamented a lot. And then if you're missing field goals, and you're also not converting in the red zone, like it's one of those situations where you kick a field goal and then you kick off and they get it at the 25, or you kick a 47-yard field goal and then they have it at the 37, and you're losing yardage that way. What he does, if I remember right, is he has these preseason projections. And yeah, Bert Auburn's not there anymore. You got Mason Shipley. Yeah. Jack Bouwmeester's in. You don't have Michael Kern. But I don't know how much he may plug in individual specialists when it comes to this type of data. It may be tough to plug in returning production at specialists and make a formula for that when already offensive returning production, you wrote 82nd, and you're like, well, what do you mean? Yeah, you lose 4 offensive line starters, but Trevor Gooseby played in 4 games, including playoff and late season games. Cole Hudson's seen a lot of action. Brandon Baker's a former top 40 prospect. Like, there's only so much data you can compile to put into here. Yeah, Ryan Wingo only had 500 yards last year or 400 receiving yards, but we think highly of Ryan Wingo. Emmett Mosley, that's returning production you can plug in. It's a lot of college football because of having 136 teams and a lot of variance in how you view the sport. It's really hard to quantify. The BCS kind of failed at that for a little while, and that's why we have this system now. But I think as far as special teams goes, it's that pure yardage aspect, and it looks a lot at what happened last year. And that's going to even out over the course of the season. We've seen Texas rise before. And once they start making up the yardage in the way that an efficiency system really likes, it'll probably help them out a lot. That could be a huge reason. Any sort of bounce back on special teams would be a big reason why Texas not only bounces back here in SP Plus, but also maybe bounces back and has shorter fields to work with, creates longer fields for opposing offenses, things like that. The Arch Manning aspect, you had kind of mentioned it, and even Evan wrote about, scenarios for Arch this season. Like, what if he's a top half quarterback in the league, which would still be great? What if he's a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the league? What if he's a Heisman finalist? And I don't know how much of a difference in quality of play there is between Heisman finalist and Heisman winner. Cam Ward wins a lot of other Heismans, but there was a guy named Travis Hunter and a guy named Ashton Genty right there ahead of him. But I think Connolly is able to kind of tell, there really is a chance that Arch Manning is as good as we've been assuming he'd be for years. If he is, nothing else matters all that much.
Yeah, and if that happens, that's not going to look like the Georgia Stetson Bennett Heisman finalist year, where I think maybe he had 20 passing touchdowns, and he was a really good player. He was really improved in that second national championship run, but he was still a glorified, a souped up game manager. And there's no scenario where I think Texas reaches its heights this year and Arch Manning is any form of a game manager. I think it's going to be that he's a Heisman finalist, that he's in New York, that he's putting up big numbers, and that he's doing a lot of things, frankly, that SP Plus likes a lot. Explosive plays, lots of yardage. Do you remember, side note, how much SP Plus hated the Tom Herman era and hated those teams? They were always.
I remember it. That's the hang up, is that 2018 team that had like no 50-yard touchdowns and would just churn down the field. Everybody's like, why is Texas 30th when they're, I think they got to like 9-2 at one point. It's like, why are they 30th when they're 9-2?
And every win besides that 2-week span against USC and TCU was a single score win.
Right.
So they were just grinding it out. I remember being so mad at the data, but then obviously you see how the rest of Tom Herman's tenure played out, and the lack of explosion, those tendency to play one-score games really costed them later, because one-score games are a coin flip, and the one season they might go your way. Ask Sonny Dykes and TCU, and the next season they might go the complete opposite. So you can't rely on that. So I do like that SP Plus, and I noted this in the article. It's really trying to be a metric that both reacts to how teams are actually playing and predicts how they will play, rather than just being a straight ranking or a straight counting of wins and losses, which there have been a lot of conversation over the last 6 months that maybe as college football fans, that's what people fall into far too often, that we're just counting on the left and right side of the record column.
And, as he continues to explain, what if he is very good? You're more questions about Texas and a typical number one team. And that's also, Texas is the team that becomes the focus of that. But that's also, I think, just indicative of the era we're in. Ohio State may be one of the last great teams, because we all saw how they were playing at the end of the year. And they still lost. They didn't play for the Big Ten championship. They lost to Michigan. They lost to Oregon the first time. Like, these teams are going to have flaws. I mean, Penn State, lost to Oregon in the Big Ten title game. Couldn't beat Ohio State. They are what they are, and they made it as far as they did. Arizona State was bad at the beginning of the year, not just because they were ranked last in the Big 12 media poll. They were just straight up bad before they started figuring it out and, beating good teams, beating a good Iowa State team, giving Texas all they could handle. So part of me thinks that, like, well, yeah, there are a lot of questions about a number one team. If you just bear with me, if you put Arch on Notre Dame and thought about what the Irish have, you're still going to have concerns about the Irish. Oh, well, they have all these freshman offensive linemen. Yeah, they have Jeremiah Love, and yeah, they have some of the best DBs in the country, but like, what about this? What about that? Like, no team, and I know Paul talked about blue chip ratio last week. No team's running into the 90s in blue chip ratio anymore in a modern college football. So it's always going to look a little bit different. Any other big sticking points? You had mentioned, Texas being third, I believe, in the SEC, behind Alabama, behind Georgia. A lot of SP Plus includes, as I mentioned, ESPN recruiting rankings, and that includes some Nick Saban classes. That includes Alabama going to the portal a little bit. Includes guys like Ryan Williams and Keelan Russell and, some of the other big-time stars who have started to produce. Anything big on Texas being third behind Alabama and Georgia?
Georgia, it makes sense. Obviously, Georgia has an incredibly high floor as a program. They proved it last year. The Alabama thing, I think that is more the data falling into a trap of just looking at the returning production, because obviously they have Ryan Williams back. They have a lot of starters on the offensive line, a lot of starters on defense back. But Alabama was a super flawed team last year. And I almost think there's a chance we could get into this year and Jalen Milroe be a little bit underrated, that we start to revisit that. Oh, maybe that guy was actually pretty good, because, they, Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, Duncanville's Keelan Russell. We don't know who their starting quarterback is going to be. So I think that was a instance of the data maybe looking too much at, we're returning all this production, but yet we don't know who our quarterback is going to be. And he did say, though, one thing that I think is an interesting note, if you read the ESPN article, I believe 6 teams were a touchdown away from being in the number 1 spot in S&P Plus in the country. And obviously Alabama's included in that. Texas is included in that. So it does show that this year is one where, his data expects there to be a lot of parity in college football. And how does that shake out? Do the really good teams lose more games to teams they shouldn't lose to? Do they beat up on each other a little bit more often? I don't know. But I think it was sort of a thing with Alabama where it's like somebody had to be slotted into that number 1 spot. I don't necessarily, they would not be on my betting card of who I think the individual national champion or even SEC champion will be.
This is going to be an interesting year for all 3 of those top teams: Alabama, Georgia, Texas. I'm still intrigued by Alabama. I've kind of been a DeBoer truther. I think Texas can kind of look.
I have
Texas
too, and I think it'll be good long term.
Right.
Yeah.
They seem to have what's figured out, and the floor is always going to be incredibly high for Georgia. But is it going to reach those 2021 and 2022 heights? Who knows? And that took care of a lot of different things. It took even taking care of other Alabama teams. And I don't think it's unfair to say that maybe they aren't at those 2021 and 2022 heights, but you can still win a lot of football games and beat great teams all the same without having those heights. But you can falter like they did against Alabama. You can beat Texas twice, but you can lose to, as you described, 12-year-old Ryan Williams. So before we keep going, got to show some love to our sponsor. That is David McClellan.
I'm just going to say, guys, you probably need a fiduciary financial advisor. And I've got the guy for you. His name is David McClellan with Forum Financial. He works broadly and deeply with his clients as a financial life coach. And he should know something about coaching because he won several national championships as a swimmer for the University of Texas. He specializes in financial planning and has contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. So contact David today to be your fiduciary financial planner and schedule a 1-hour consultation to assess your financial situations. The free consultation is available, so just give him a call. The number is 312-933-8823. That's 312-933-8823. His email is also in the description below.
You got to talk a little bit about some of the Longhorns who have made their way to the pros. You got to talk a little bit about your guy in the Weekend in Sports, David Benda, honoring Jake Ellinger, wearing number 48. Doing work there in the NFL as an undrafted free agent. The journey you wrote about was awesome. Go search that if you haven't. David Benda. You can just search David Benda, Texas Longhorns, RT Young. I think it'll pop up, and definitely.
Yeah, I think the title is "Be Undeniable."
Yes,
David Benda's journey to the NFL. Yeah,
but that means also that there are undrafted guys and there are 7th-round guys who are getting some call outs and highlights. And even Mike McDaniel mentioned Quinn Ewers had a good day of practice, I think, during the first week. But as good as this throw is, and I'm going to play it because it's nice. Let's try that. We've seen that plenty. We watched a lot of Quinn Ewers action in games where that happens. One throw. One throw on one day of training camp in one practice, in one period.
In shorts.
In shorts. On the Dolphins.
Yes. So my commentary on this was less about Quinn Ewers and more that I can't read about NFL training camp. You hear that thunder behind me?
Yeah.
I can't read about NFL training camp hype anymore because it has just reached just an all-time silly season pitch. And, remember a couple years ago where I think there was some video of like Patrick Mahomes, like his receivers had dropped like 3 straight passes or something in training camp, and people were like, the Chiefs are washed, and then he threw an interception. I think they won the Super Bowl that year. But if you just look at any sort of Twitter highlight of any local beat reporter in an NFL market, there's just constantly something of like, don't see that, don't slow this guy. Inevitably, that person will be cut in 6 weeks. And so I just thought it was funny yesterday when there just became this groundswell of not only Texas fans, but people like Des Bryant and NFL analysts who were saying, Quinn Ewers is the steal of the draft. Quinn Ewers is going to be the Dolphins week 1 starter. And it just was hilarious because when I clicked on the highlight, I was like, yeah, an out route to the sideline. That was one of the throws that Quinn Ewers could consistently always make at Texas, that he was really, really good at. I think he did it in the first quarter of the 2022 Alabama game. So it was one of the first great throws we ever saw him make. And the question about Quinn, who I like, when we had, any sort of like rider divide on the site, I was definitely on the side that was always championing Quinn Ewers and appreciative of what he had done for Texas. But the question of Quinn isn't, can he make one spectacular throw? He absolutely can. He does it all the time. It's, can he do the things that he is inconsistent at with more consistency, drive the ball down the field? Can he stay healthy? And can he do those things? And that's not going to be answered probably this season, but definitely not in an NFL training camp setting in shorts against your own team. So I just think the training camp discourse in general has gotten to be hilarious. But I'm rooting for Quinn, and hopefully that's a sign of things to come. And he lights it up, takes Tua's job. Who's the back? Who's technically the second string there?
Zach Wilson.
Remember. Oh yeah, Zach Wilson. So hopefully Zach Wilson gets, busy with some of the moms of Miami, and he's distracted, and it's Quinn Ewers' job for the taking, and he's the next Dan Marino, number 14, Quinn Ewers. So
one of the things about the NFL that has helped it explode is that you can start scrolling Instagram and scrolling X and seeing, who was it who posted this highlight? At least Nick Penikoff, and I'll see who this is. He is giving me a second here. Works for Fantasy Football Astronauts and Fantasy Pros NFL. And he probably, if I had to guess, like grabbed that off of somebody else's account, which you can do on here. The thing is, it's just one. But that's the NFL. They want it to blow up. They want that one clip of Quinn Ewers to start people talking about how he shouldn't have fallen to the 7th round. They want Dov Kleeman to tweet out something about, oh, is this the guy who's going to win the MVP when he's going to finish like 19th? Like that's how it works. That's how the machine gets built. That's how you see highlights on your feed and stuff like that. That doesn't happen as much in college. It's a little bit more curated to what the team wants to show you. Most of the practice clips that are going to be the fun ones of, a long run up the middle or something like that. They're going to come from the team accounts. We're going to have stuff next week that's going to be awesome. And hearing Steve Sarkisian instruct and seeing, just Arch throwing the ball and hitting long passes against air. Like we're going to see that. The real stuff kind of comes from the team accounts and I love, oh my gosh, if you can see like on the screen of this clip, just to the left on that poll, it says no recording. So whoever Nick Penikoff grabbed it from was breaking some rules. But like the NFL it just spreads out so much. Whereas in college, aside from a few different teams like Arizona State. They've said they've just basically let anybody come in and record, or, what's his name? Dillingham has practice almost completely open. You don't get to see it spread out like that. And that's part of the NFL. And that's what allows this hype to build. And it kind of just reinforces like why you come to Inside Texas, why you rely on reliable people for these types of information. If there was an Inside Texas equivalent in the NFL, I'd be saying the same thing. Like, go to the people who either get to see everything instead of one clip, or get to hear about pretty much everything that happens through great sourcing behind the scenes, because they're going to tell you more about, let's just say Aaron Hampton, who we think is going to have a decent year this year. Let's say I'm at practice and I record a clip of him doing a one-handed pinch catch on the sideline, doing a backflip and getting both feet in. That'd be like the coolest thing ever. I'm not going to deny that. But is Aaron Hampton going to be ahead of Ryan Wingo? Is he going to be ahead of DeAndre Morris? Is he going to be ahead of Emmett Mosley? Maybe Parker Livingstone? Is that going to move him up? No, but everybody's going to be like, oh, watch out for Aaron Hampton this year. Guy's going to do it big. And it's just one play. And so that's something, as you write about very eloquently, that you have to look out for. And it can get anybody. It can even get people like Des Bryant too. So always go to where the good information is. And I think even in the NFL, when it's so much bite size, you got to get the big morsels and go to where the good information.
And everybody in the NFL is really good. So it's, most people are going to be able to make the most incredible one-off catch that you've ever seen. You remember back in the day where like every offseason in the NBA, there'd be videos of Dwight Howard shooting 3-pointers. And it's like, well, Dwight Howard's an NBA player. If he was playing against us, he would absolutely murder us in a game of horse, and so I think that happens a lot of times with NFL training camp and even high level college football to a lesser degree, but everybody's going to look good in the underwear Olympics, as they say, and be able to do spectacular things that us mere mortals aren't going to be able to do. So like you said, very precisely, you gotta rely on the good intel, and you gotta look at the evidence and how things stack up to really decide who's going to break out.
Before we keep on going,
I hope Des Bryant's right.
Yeah,
I'm rooting for Quinn Ewers.
Before we keep going, got to show some love to our other sponsor, that is Laura Baker.
Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512, or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description, as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
All right, RT, this is the last thing we're talking about. A little bit of a wrap up from Big Ten Media Days. This is a tweet from Commissioner Greg Sankey. It is, as you can tell, that SEC style monogram, or I guess that circular style monogram, but that's TOC. And the caption is "Greetings from that other conference." I think I missed this because I was in a Ford Explorer driving across the Mountain Time Zone. But tell me what's going on here. I know it involves Penn State, Greg Sankey. What's happening here?
So last week at Big Ten Media Days in Vegas, Penn State coach James Franklin,
Big Ten market for sure.
Yeah, once upon a time was a SEC coach. He mentioned a lot of the stuff that he was saying, I agreed with, that college football, before they move forward with things like new playoffs, etc., new playoff formats, they need to have uniformity. Everybody needs to play the same number of conference games. There needs to be, a uniform way that we make and decide schedules. A lot of things need to be sorted out. And when he referred to the SEC, he called them that other conference. So Greg Sankey obviously had some fun with that, tweeted back a little jab, "Greetings from that other conference." So nothing too serious. Obviously, just some playful jabs, but I felt like it just kind of underscored how these two conferences at the end of the day, no matter if Tony Petitti and Greg Say are golfing buddies or on the same page about certain stuff, the conferences themselves are made up by the figurehead coaches and the university presidents and the athletic directors who make up the member institutions, and they're rivals with one another. The conferences are rivals. The conferences want different things. The Big Ten's power dynamic is very different. That's why they're obviously pushing for let me see if I can get this right. 4-4-3-2. What is it? Yeah, 4-4-2-2-2-1-1. Something along the lines where they want to get 4 guaranteed auto bid Big Ten teams every year. That's where the SEC was originally aligned, but the SEC obviously has a conference full of schools and coaches with huge egos who obviously think that they can win any street fight, any street brawl that they're put into. So they like the model that's now gaining steam of the 5+11, 5 guarantees, 11 at-large bids, and SEC teams say, we think we're the best. Let's fight our way in. And so I think it shows, obviously, that the conferences, maybe at the end of the day, no matter how much the commissioners like each other, our adversaries, their rivals, more than anything, I think it just shows we're a long way away from any sort of breakaway Premier League style led by the Big Ten or the SEC. I think it's going to be, I think it would be very surprising to see those two conferences agree enough to where they decide to completely alter the way that the sport looks. I just can't see the two conferences agreeing that much. Can you?
No, that's the thing, is that if you're going to make a break off like that, you have to be basically in lockstep. And this kind of shows, I can't, and to be honest, this is like the one playoff conversation, basically formatting, that I've missed a little bit on. I get the 8-game, 9-game weights on the format, and that makes sense to me, whether it be 12, whether it be 16, whether it be 5-11, whether it be 4-4-2-2-1-1, I don't know, something.
I couldn't remember if the ACC got 3 or 2. I think they get 2. So I think,
it all depends on 12 or 14 or 16. Yeah, also, yeah. Like that's the whole crazy part of it. But yeah, it definitely speaks to the fact that these organizations are not quite in lockstep. And with the SEC, they've had 8 games forever. That was when they were a 10-team league, a 12-team league, a 14-team league, and a 16-team league, right? Does that make sense? They went to 12 with South Carolina, 14 in Arkansas, 14 with Missouri and A&M, and now 16 with OU and Texas. So that means they weren't even playing everybody back when they only had 10 teams. Like, they were skipping opponents some years. So this has been around for a while. I know the Big Ten, when you have 10 or 11, you can play everybody. I don't even think they played everybody then. I think
the 9-game conference schedule, I want to say, didn't it start with
Big 12?
It started with the Big 12, but until, I think somebody posted this the other day on the board, until 2002 or 2003, when it officially went to college football teams play 12 games a season, when it's not an 11-game schedule. That was when the ninth conference game through the Big 12 really came into play.
So this is a funny barb, and I've said I like Sankey before, but it does kind of show just what is. There's still so much space between all these entities in finding the middle ground, and at this point they still have about, I think, 4 or 5 months left to really figure out what exactly they want to do with the future of the playoff and the future of conference schedules. It just stinks to be in limbo and not know. And then it just stinks to, kind of be sitting here, even though it doesn't at the same time, and know, like, okay, Texas at least is in a position to probably be in good shape no matter what ends up happening. But it's just a very interesting conversation, and one that shows, of all the different things happening in college sports, there's always going to be there, because there's no unification from the top. It's always going to be, It's going to be the Articles and Confederation instead of the U.S. government. And I think that's as far as we can get. So great discussion on the Reheat. Hey, by this time next week, we'll be talking about some practice storylines. This week, starting, I believe, on Wednesday, we will be having the capability to go to practice, catch some clips, see Arch Manning throwing against air. I can't wait to watch that. It's going to change my life. So we can't wait to show that to you. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Me, Eric, Evan, anybody else we send out there. Will Gallagher is going to have some great pictures. RT may get you out there as well. We're going to be showcasing all the different stuff from practice here on the channel and on InsideTexas.com. So make sure you go and join. And to be fully previewed, to know more than your neighbor about Texas football, you're already here. You go to Inside Texas, but you got to get thinking Texas football as well. Every position, every player, every opponent, every SEC team, the landscape of college football within the transfer portal era, within kind of the pseudo salary cap era. And then, of course, Eric Naleen has a look at the 2025 recruiting class, some of whom are going to be battling for spots this upcoming season. All that's in the Longhorn Football Prospectus. Great way to catch up on everything you may have missed in the offseason. I've told Paul this before. Every time Texas plays a road game early in the season, this is when I save it for that flight to go through it all, read it all, and get there. And you can do that. You can read it now. It's going to be perfect. So go get by thinking Texas football. Should be a lot of fun. And then, yeah, we'll have some practice to talk about. We'll have actual football to talk about. Should be a lot of fun. You're going to want to check it all out on Inside Texas. So, RT, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the Reheat, the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com.